I recently got this new bookshelf, which basically means that I don't know where most of my books are because I haven't organized it yet. And I've been looking for Infinite Noise for like 20 minutes and I finally found it, and it's here, literally way in the back. Here you go. Hello, finally. Hi. So in my previous video, I mentioned that I was going to make the next video about Radio Silence because I had just finished it. But honestly, I am very strongly trying to convince my 16-year-old cousin to read it so that we can make a review together. Because I feel like it would be so fun to have her perspective as somebody who's the age of the characters and my perspective trying to translate all of the messages and everything that it's saying into my life situation. So now I'm going to talk about another book that I read and I wrote a lot of notes about back when I read it. And it is The Infinite Noise. I love this book. I honestly loved this book so much, and it's mostly because right before it came out, I was super obsessed with the Bright Sessions. But I'm going to try not to go too into the Bright Sessions right now, so we're just going to talk about The Infinite Noise by Lauren Shippen. Even though they're in the same world and kind of the same thing at first, you'll see. For a quick summary, The Infinite Noise focuses on two teenagers, Caleb and Adam. Caleb is a 16-year-old boy who's in high school, and he has this sort of superpower that makes him an extreme empath. This basically means that he has very extreme emotional reactions to things that happen around him, mood swings that are a little too much even for your average teenager, and just generally, like, he feels, like, literally feels what the other people in the room are feeling. So he starts seeing this therapist called Dr. Bright, who also sees a lot of other teenagers and people who have this different abilities, and she suggests that he befriend Adam because Caleb feels like Adam's feelings feel a little different, and we all know why that is, but he doesn't know why that is, and that's what makes this so precious from the beginning. Once Caleb and Adam become friends, then we see them kind of develop individually as characters, but also with each other and with the people around them. So overall, this book is very good for trying to explore the relationships that you have with other people and with your mental health. God, I even love this cover because look at them. Look, he's blue, he's yellow, and right there in the middle, they're green. The Infinite Noise is narrated in first-person point of view, but you get both Caleb and Adam's perspectives in these alternating chapters. So you see, first chapter would be Caleb, second chapter would be Adam, and so on. I feel like that having two perspectives could be a little hit or miss for me, because sometimes if it's not done very well, you kind of get them confused, and that's just frustrating because you have to keep turning the page and be like, wait, who's talking? But in this book specifically, I felt like Lauren Shippen did a very good job, because even as you keep reading, you keep feeling more and more like you're getting to know them better and they're becoming your friends, so you don't get their voices confused at all. They're very different. They're very just because, like, as people, they're so different. When you're reading what happens in their minds, you're like, okay, I know for sure who this is, without having to like turn back the pages and check the title again. Like, maybe I did that like once or twice, but generally it was so clear. Also, having these two different perspectives made me feel like Shippen has such a good way with words, because I felt like some of the things that they were saying were pulled right out of my mind. Like, it was so, I don't know how to define it. It was just so specific. And the fact that those thoughts are so specific and those feelings are so clear and relatable, it just makes it more comforting to keep reading the book. In terms of pacing, I also felt throughout the whole book that it was just right. Like, it never felt like it was going too fast or too slow, and the relationship itself felt like it was progressing so naturally that it felt even more realistic. Even when it came to sort of time skips or distance, Shippen had a series of chapters that were just a couple of lines long, and I feel like that kept it very much in the right pace. And in terms of more specific things, I really enjoyed the way that Caleb described emotions, because as I mentioned, Caleb can literally feel what everybody else around him is feeling. So when he gets overwhelmed and you get to read how that feels, it's so real. And he uses colors and waves and all these metaphors and imagery to tell you how it feels, that if you have never felt an emotion, you would read this and you would feel it. Even little things like him describing how it feels to feel Adam's emotions towards him, or how, like, if adults around him are getting drunk, how that feels for him. All of those little details really made it more realistic, even though this is like obviously very sci-fi sort of situation. Another moment that I really appreciated was Caleb starting to realize that he has feelings for Adam himself. Like, it's not just Adam's feelings that he's feeling, it's his own feelings for him. And there's this one line where he's like, I've never wanted to kiss anyone more. Oh, and that's when he realizes. I just felt like that was such a mood. And it's also such a soft and pure moment because I'm a sucker for very nice, honest, pure friendships turning into romance. When that was happening, I literally wrote on my notes, we stand an honest, healthy friendship that turns into romance. Because honestly, that's what this is. Like, they slowly become friends and they fall in love with each other for who they are as people. They understand each other, and even when they don't, they try to. And when they like have discussions and have issues, like maybe they need a little time, they still come together again. And I don't know, I just feel like that's such a beautiful example of a healthy relationship. And on the topic of honest and healthy relationships, I also really appreciated that Lauren Shippen never makes it seem as if any of these characters' life is just gonna be solved and they're gonna be happily ever after just because they fell in love and have a boyfriend now. Like, obviously reading the way that they support each other and understand each other is beautiful, but I don't know, it just feels so much more real that they still have to deal with things outside of that relationship, like anxiety, depression, or just pressures from yourself or from others for your future. Like, those are all very real things, and don't just go away because you found somebody that loves you. It helps, but it's not like the whole solution. I read on my notes as well that I was reading reviews about this book right after I finished it, and there was this one, Kirkus review, I think it was, I'll link it below, and it said something about how a boyfriend is not an antidote. And that's very much something that Lauren Shippen tries to explain throughout their whole relationship. But even though The Infinite Noise is very much about the relationship between Caleb and Adam, it doesn't mean that it's not also about their relationships with their families. And that's also something that I really appreciated, because I feel like in a lot of YA fiction, like, the parents are just these very flat characters that don't really show up in most of the story, or they're dead. But in this one, like, you have Caleb having this family that like loves him and tries to understand him all the time. Like, they're the ones that found Dr. Bright for him, but like, even though he loves all these aspects of his family, it's also nice for him to have time for himself. And that's shown, for example, how when he's going to sleep, he's like, okay, I can feel like everybody's mind kind of like shutting off, and that's when he gets to like think about himself. Like, I think obviously this is like the superpower of being an extreme empath, but it really shows what it's like when you're like very empathetic. It's kind of hard to have time for yourself because you're feeling so much of what everybody else is feeling, and it gets a little exhausting. And for Adam, it was also very nice to read the ways in which his parents were so concerned about his mental health as well. Like, they were so happy when Adam was just saying like, oh yeah, like this friend from school, Caleb, is coming over, and the mom was like literally about to drop the plates and be like, your friend's coming over. I don't know, that's how I pictured it in my mind. Like, she was just so excited. Like, both of them have such good supportive parents. It was beautiful. And with Caleb and his little sister too, I love that. I am a sucker for sibling relationships in books. That's all I need. I also really enjoy when I'm watching reviews and people bring up some of their favorite lines or moments, so I'm gonna talk about some of the things that I highlighted in the book, because yes, I also have it on Kindle. There's a line where Caleb's in therapy and again, Dr. Bright says, Caleb, what have we talked about? And Caleb's like, don't deflect emotions with being an asshole. And Dr. Bright's like, that's not exactly how I said it, but yes, I really appreciated that. And with Adam as well, I feel like the way he phrases things sometimes like slaps you on the face. Like, there's in chapter 8, he said a couple of things that I highlighted, but the first one that I highlighted was, everything always sounds better in my head. My brain runs a mile a minute. I'm clever in my head. And then I open my mouth and nothing comes out. And then a lot of stuff, either I feel everything too much or I feel nothing at all. Damn, like that, wow, no, that line seriously made me cry. There's also another line that I highlighted here, and it's related to that line that I'm sure you've heard. It's something about how like you have to love yourself before you love somebody else, or something like that. And we were kind of just discussing about that line, and there's a part of the book that says, I like you and your father likes you, and anyone who gets to know you will like you. Sometimes that's enough. We don't always have to love ourselves in order to receive love from others. Sometimes that's how we learn to love ourselves. And that really got me thinking. And this is a bit where Caleb describes how Adam's emotions feel. He says, Adam's emotions clear out everything. They quiet the infinite noise of the world and let me find the yellow parts of me that hurt. Yellow. There are so many other bits that I kind of want to read out, but I also don't want to spoil the details of the book. So you should just go ahead and read it. But in conclusion, yeah, this is a beautiful book, and It's related to the Bright Sessions, the podcast, but if you haven't heard the Bright Sessions, you can totally read the whole book and it doesn't spoil the big parts of the Bright Sessions. I listened to the podcast first and I liked how reading Caleb's thoughts felt like little revelations for me, but I don't think that it's gonna make that much of a difference. So whether you have never heard of the Bright Sessions or whether you've already known the Bright Sessions so you feel like this is gonna be boring, it really doesn't matter. Like, it's good either way. But in general, I do recommend the Bright Sessions as well so much. It's my favorite podcast that I have ever heard. Probably, I haven't heard a lot of podcasts, but it's one of my favorite podcasts. So yeah, here's a quick summary. So in the Bright Session podcast, every episode is kind of a different therapy session that Dr. Bright has recorded with one of her patients. And all of her patients are people like Caleb who have this special abilities and they're called atypicals. So you have, for example, this girl who has a lot of anxiety, so whenever she has a panic attack, she travels to a different time. And then there's Chloe who hears voices and she thinks they're the voices of angels, and I'm not gonna tell you what it is just so that you keep listening to it. Okay, stop recording, so I don't know how far it went. There's Caleb, obviously, whose superpower is this sort of extreme empathy, and there's a couple of others, but those are the ones that I remember the most right now. Oh, I mean, and there's Damien, and Damien is just an interesting character to read. He's kind of like a villain character, except it's kind of not that simple, and his voice is great. Everybody's voices is great. Everybody's voice acting is amazing. I literally started listening to it because I was just gonna like have something as sort of background noise while I was doing other stuff in my room, but then I stopped what I was doing and I like lied on my bed and just listened to it like blankly staring at the ceiling. It was an experience. I also finished the first episode and the first thing that I did was text one of my friends and be like, you need to listen to this. Like, I cannot do this alone. You need to listen to this with me. And she did. So the next like 2 weeks or something, or however long it took for both of us to listen to it, it was like I would listen to 5 episodes and I'd be like, how far are you? And she'd be like, 6 episodes. And I'd be like, okay, this is what I thought. But then like we were trying still not to spoil each other. It was good. It was good. I'm also gonna post a link on the description box of this thread that Andrea made about just basically reasons why you have to listen to the Bright Sessions, because it's so well written. She's very eloquent and it will definitely convince you that you have to read it. I mean, listen to it. Anyway, it's nighttime now. I've been talking for like half an hour and I got interrupted halfway through. So I hope that this was not as confusing as it is in the way that I remember talking about it. Long story short, Infinite Noise is a very beautiful book. Reading their love story is very soft and beautiful. It makes you laugh, it makes you cry, and it's just everything that I needed to get out of my reading slump. So if you need a recommendation for this month, read The Infinite Noise. Thank you for watching.
Bye. Little Infinite Noise.